Hi there. So tell us who you are and where you chose to study chemical engineering and why.
Hello, I'm Zeella and I'm a process engineer at Amec Foster Wheeler. And my main kind of reason to study chemical engineering started when I was quite young at school. So I enjoyed all the sciences. I also quite liked maths, and I knew I wanted a role that would involve problem solving and kind of analytical thinking. So we had a careers day at my school, and I remember a chemical engineer came in and kind of had a discussion with us as to what the role entailed. And the aspect of it that kind of grabbed my attention almost immediately was the fact that it was one of those careers which just has a part of so many different facets of our life. So one kind of attention grabbing thing he did in the presentation was to say, the nylon in the jumpers from your school uniform, a process engineer will have been involved in the manufacture of that. If any of you guys have a headache, the aspirin or the paracetamol you take, chemical engineers help make that. The fuel in the cars that you took to come to school today, again, the chemical engineer had a role to play in the manufacture of that. So I was really kind of impressed by how wide-reaching chemical engineering was, and that's kind of what helped make me make my decision to study chemical engineering. And when it came to deciding on what university to go to, I had heard that it was best to go for an IChemE accredited university. So I heard that that would help with becoming a chartered engineer. So I kind of looked up the list of those ones, and I ultimately chose Heriot-Watt because I'd heard that they had quite strong links with industry. So I knew that that would come into play when I was ultimately looking for a job or for a summer placement.
Okay. So you mentioned that you work at Amec Foster Wheeler.
Mm-hmm.
Was this your first postgraduate role and why did you choose this company?
Yeah, so it was my first job that I got out of university, and I've been working at Amec Foster Wheeler for 3.5 years now. And I think for me, my kind of key reasons for joining Amec Foster Wheeler is because I knew I wanted to go into the oil and gas industry. Being a process or a chemical engineer within the oil and gas industry, it's quite a dynamic role. Sometimes you don't know what some of the challenges you're going to be faced with, and I quite liked that aspect of it. And I think another big factor for me was the opportunity to travel. Working for a multinational company means that I'll have the opportunity, as I get more and more experience, to work all across the globe, and travel is actually a hobby of mine. So the chance to kind of combine a hobby with my job was something that was very enticing. So I think they were the main factors for me.
Okay. And what is your normal day like at the office or at work?
Okay, so I think the best way to describe the sort of work that we do at Amec Foster Wheeler is kind of like a university design project. So Amec Foster Wheeler is an engineering contracting company. So what we do the big engineering projects for the bigger oil and gas companies like BP and Shell. So we design their offshore assets, and just like in university where you have the design projects, it's kind of a multidisciplinary team. Day to day, I'll be liaising with the kind of instruments department, electrical, mechanical engineers, and I'm putting together the process deliverables. So that can range from equipment sizing calculation to some computer simulation using Aspen HYSYS, or it could be putting together a line list, which kind of just shows all the new lines we're introducing to the system. So it's quite varied in that sense. And then so it's kind of producing these main deliverables, and it's a mix of that with just meetings and also safety briefings like HAZOPs as well.
Okay. And what do you enjoy most about work? That sounds like a lot of stuff that you do. So what is the thing you enjoy the most?
I think the number one aspect for me is I feel like I'm really making a difference in this world. oil and gas and is such a huge part of everybody's day-to-day lives when it comes, whether it's the fuel or it's even jet fuel or from the kind of the petrochemical side of things, it's synthetic, it's the rubbers, it's the resins as well. So I like the fact that I'm helping to I'm helping kind of design I'm helping to design a product that comes into a lot of people's day-to-day lives. Chemical engineering is all about kind of converting raw materials into useful products, and that is definitely kind of gives me the job satisfaction for me. And then also I like the fact that the career progression opportunities with a chemical engineering degree, I feel that even though right now I'm working in a process engineering role, so many other roles will be open to me as I get more and more experience, whether it's kind of taking a step to the side and trying safety for a while, or doing a role offshore maybe, a more operational role, or whether it's kind of moving up to the managerial side of things. I think with chemical engineering, it gives you a good solid foundation to open up a number of future career options.
Great. So you mentioned you had this challenging job at times. What are some of the challenges that you have faced or you've experienced, and how did you overcome those challenges? Now, that doesn't have to be technical challenges, that could be personnel, personal, just whatever you think is kind of applicable.
Okay. I think for me, the biggest challenge was the change from kind of university to the real working world. So at uni, a lot of it was kind of based on deriving equations and kind of doing calculations to 3 decimal places or a large number of significant figures. So when it came to work, it was hard to kind of switch that mentality and try and think practically, kind of have a more practical head on and realize that maybe the accuracy doesn't have to be to these 5 decimal places, but then other things become more important. I think at university studying chemical engineering, that was always the focus, but in the real world, we can propose a solution, but we have to then liaise with all the other departments and see how our proposal affects them. So it's kind of sometimes it's been harder to kind of see the bigger picture of things. For example, if I was to design a piece of piping and say I want it to be this size because I want to minimize the pressure drop, that would be kind of my main driver, whereas the piping department, they're the ones that look at how it's actually spatially laid out, and my kind of concerns might not necessarily match up with their priorities. So I think learning about the balance and seeing the broader picture has been the biggest challenge for me. And I think that just comes from kind of being at university where everything was kind of more theoretical and hypothetical, to being in a working environment where you're just faced with a lot of different constraints that you have to kind of weigh the pros and cons of. So for me, I'd say that was the biggest challenge that I've faced so far.
So we'll step away from work for a little while. And you mentioned that travel is one of your big hobbies that you really like to do. So could you tell us some about your travel adventures and a bit about your other hobbies and interests that you have outside of work?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, yeah, I love to travel. I love being kind of immersed in different cultures and just experiencing what the world has to offer. So recently, I went to Bali in Indonesia and Lombok, which are 2 islands in Indonesia, and that was, I had an amazing time there. It was great to I went on a group tour, so I actually got the chance to kind of see some of go off the beaten track, as it were, and kind of see some of the less touristy places, and see some of the locals and hang out with them and speak to them, which was a really good insight into just a different culture to what I'm used to here in the UK. And then another kind of hobby of mine is cooking. So I'll go on holiday and I'll taste all this delicious food, then I'll come home and I'll try and make it myself, to varying levels of success, but I try nonetheless. So I think for
Oh,
me, food and travel are definitely two of my biggest hobbies.
well, mine too. So, um, okay, so this is one for more kind of aimed at uni students, this question. While you were at university, did you do any work experience, maybe over summers or part of your undergraduate degree? And if you
Yeah,
did, could you elaborate a wee bit?
yeah, sure thing. So, as I say, with doing a degree in chemical engineering means I think it's a very employable degree, if that makes sense. I think a large multitude of different employers in different sectors and different industries look favorably upon it because they know that you have to apply these problem solving, these logical and analytical skills. So that was great in the sense that I knew
Oh,
that I had a lot of options, but then that also meant that I didn't know where to start into deciding what to do as a job. So in my third year, I thought that I would maybe want to go into kind of the more business side of things and go into a commercial role. So I did a summer internship in Shanghai as a business analyst for a company, a telecoms company who were trying to expand to the US and Canadian markets. And that was a real eye-opener for me, but it kind of made me realize that I would maybe want to go down the engineering route first of all, at least. Because the thing with engineering is once you go in it, you can still branch out into managerial or commercial side of things, whereas if you start off in a business role, it would be harder to come back to engineering. So that summer internship was a great insight into that, into the commercial side of things for me. But I decided, obviously, ultimately to become a chemical engineer. So when it came to fourth year, I thought I would do an engineering placement so that I could get an understanding of what it meant to be a process engineer. So I did a summer internship with ConocoPhillips, which was it was the first time I'd really kind of seen what it was it was meant to be a process engineer, and it was a great experience. I got to go offshore with that role, it was just opened my eyes to even just the sheer size of the equipment that I was so used to seeing kind of on P&IDs and doing calculation on. It was just different to actually fully appreciate them. So, I mean, I definitely recommend getting experience in as many different things as possible because you never really know. You can read the job description as much as you want, but you never really know whether you'll enjoy the role until you've done it. And I think a summer placement can be a great way to have a taster as to what you would be doing in the full-time position.
okay, excellent. Okay, so this could be a bit of a touchy question, this one. As a female engineer, do you have any concerns about being limited, i.e. reaching a glass ceiling, or do you feel that this no longer exists in 2016?
Well, in my personal experience, I'm yet to have experienced any kind of felt any hindrance being a female. Just describing my job to you, as you can see, it doesn't kind of require any physical strength or getting my hands dirty. And I think that's maybe the misconception that a lot of school children, maybe even university students might have of engineering because it's so broad and there's so many different topics within it. Most people's first exposure to an engineer might be someone who helped fix their car or someone who came to fix their boiler. So I think having that kind of realize, I think it's really important to kind of spread the word to the younger generations for them to see that that's not what the role entails. I think more and more girls are outperforming their male counterparts at school in maths and science. And it's that application of maths and science that is the role of a chemical engineer. So there's no reason, I don't see a reason for anyone to doubt my ability in my day-to-day role. And I haven't experienced that personally. I think, for example, at Amec Foster Wheeler, we started in 2012, and there were 5 of us, and 3 out of the 5 of us were actually females. So I think, whereas in the past there's no denying that it still is a male-dominated industry. I think the fact that as I see the graduate intake and I see more and more girls kind of take on engineering roles, I think that's definitely starting to change. And I think that's definitely a step in the right direction, and more needs to be done to kind of encourage females to do engineering and make them realize that it doesn't need to be seen as an old boys club. There's no reason why a girl wouldn't be capable of doing the job. But I think another aspect of this is, so in terms of the hiring process and in terms of my day-to-day work, I haven't seen anyone kind of be kind of sexist towards me or discriminate against me in that way. But I think the next stage in my life, as I get older and I start to settle down, will be if I decide to start a family. And that might be, I don't know, that I've heard people have experiences where they felt that that's where things maybe change, and they felt that they were limited in the options that they had for kind of managing their work life and their home life with their children. So that remains to be unseen, but I can only hope that things are getting better.
Yeah, hopefully. And final question. So you have kind of touched on this already, but so you mentioned earlier about career opportunities in diversifying into safety or operational or managerial. So what are your future aspirations, and where do you kind of see yourself in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, I think for me, my first priority would be becoming a chartered chemical engineer. So I've been working for just under 3.5 years now. So I would like to be chartered within the next couple of years. Because I said one of the draws for me in joining joining Amec Foster Wheeler and joining the oil and gas industry was the opportunity to travel. And I just think having that internationally recognized standard will open a lot of doors for me in terms of working abroad, because there might be people in other countries who may be not familiar with the uni I went to, or kind of my experiences in that sense. So it'd be good to just have something that is kind of like that demonstrates that I'm at a minimum standard. So I think that would be something I'd want to achieve kind of in the next 2 to 3 years. And then after that, operational, definitely, I'd be keen to get a role maybe on site or offshore, which would give me the opportunity to kind of build on my kind of practical experience. And I think that would really complement the design work I've been doing just now quite well, to just make me a better rounded engineer. So I'd like to do something like that within the next sort of 10 years. And then moving on from that next 15 years, I would probably want to go down the route of engineering management or some sort of kind of technical management, where I'm able to kind of use the skills that I've learned as a practicing engineer, but take more of a strategic role in the development of projects. So yeah, I would summarize that as my kind of future aspirations, but it's one of those things where I know will change very often, so yeah. Just take each day as it comes.
Definitely. It's good to have a plan though, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Zeella, for your time. It's been very insightful.
Thank you.